They fired me the morning I saved the company $6.5 million. Not kind of saved, not technically saved. I mean, I sat at my desk at 7:15 in the morning with a vendor contract and a highlighter and found the clause that would have triggered an EPA enforcement action serious enough to shut down 2 production lines and hand federal regulators a reason to audit every facility Hartwell owned. The kind of exposure that ends companies, the kind that gets executives indicted. I flagged it, wrote the memo, sent it up the chain by 8:47 a.m. By 2:15 that afternoon, I was sitting in a conference room being told to pack my things. My name is Carl Briggs. I'm 54 years old. And what I'm about to tell you is the story of how a document I wrote 15 years ago, one nobody remembered existed, destroyed the career of the man who fired me. I spent 19 years at Hartwell Industrial Systems in Columbus, Ohio, senior procurement and contracts analyst. Some people called me the paper wall, not always as a compliment. Hartwell made industrial automation equipment, conveyor systems, robotic assembly components, the kind of machinery that runs inside factories most people never see. In that world, a missed compliance clause doesn't mean a bad quarter. It means a federal fine, a production shutdown, or somebody getting hurt on the floor. I understood that going in, and I never forgot it. My background was mechanical engineering. Spent 6 years doing actual design work before I moved into procurement. That shift turned out to be the best move I ever made. Turns out I was better at reading contracts than I was at reading blueprints. Maybe because I understood both ends, what the machines actually did and what the paperwork was supposed to protect. My days were straightforward, in by 6:45. Gas station coffee, large, black, no sugar. Review whatever the sales team had negotiated without telling me. Fix the problems before they became lawsuits. Drive home to Sheila. Call Owen at school if it wasn't too late. Repeat. I wasn't loud about what I did. I didn't need to be. The contracts were the record. 19 years of them, airtight, time-stamped, filed in a system only I fully understood. That was enough, until it wasn't. Scott Velder arrived on a Tuesday in March with a Wharton MBA, a standing desk he'd shipped from his last job, and the kind of energy that makes experienced people nervous. He was 36, new VP of operations. He'd come from a mid-sized logistics startup where moving fast and breaking things had worked out fine because nothing they broke was load-bearing. At Hartwell, everything was load-bearing. Scott talked about startup velocity, the way some people talk about religion. In his first all-hands meeting, he used the phrase "move at the speed of business" 4 times. I was sitting in the back row with my coffee, and I remember thinking, this is going to be a problem. What most people at Hartwell didn't know was that Scott had arrived with a net under him. Philip Strand, one of our board directors, was his brother-in-law. I confirmed it through a LinkedIn search and a conversation with someone in HR who'd processed Scott's onboarding paperwork. Scott didn't need to perform quickly. He just needed to not fail catastrophically before Philip could protect him. That safety net explained a lot about why he felt comfortable doing what he did next. Within 60 days, Scott had created what he called fast-track approvals. Time-sensitive deals, he said. We can't lose partnerships waiting on legal review cycles. What it meant in practice was that vendor contracts were getting signed before I ever saw them. Sometimes I received a copy afterward for the file. Sometimes I got nothing until a vendor called with a question about terms they didn't understand. I kept doing my job, sent memos, flagged risks, never raised my voice, never made it political, put the concerns in writing through official channels every single time. I also started doing something else. Quietly, every email where Scott bypassed review, I forwarded to a personal archive legally through my own company account, explicitly permitted under my employment agreement. Every timestamp, every vendor name, every message that said, let's just get this signed before end of quarter. I'd been doing it for 90 days before the conveyor contract landed on my desk. Now, I need to back up and explain something, because the real trap Scott walked into wasn't built in those 90 days. It was built 15 years earlier, and it started with an OSHA audit that almost cost Hartwell everything. It was 2009, I was 5 years in. We'd brought on a third-party contractor for facility upgrades, and the safety documentation on their workers was a mess: incomplete records, missing certifications, liability language that left Hartwell exposed if anyone got hurt on site. I caught it during routine contract review, raised it 3 times through normal channels, got told twice to move on that the deal was already done. Then an OSHA inspector showed up for a routine visit, found the same gaps I'd been flagging for weeks, and the next 3 months were not fun for anyone. Gerald Haas, our VP of operations at the time, dealt with the aftermath personally. Good man, methodical, fair. When the dust settled, he called me into his office and said something I never forgot. "Carl," he said, "if you ever raise a flag like that again, and someone punishes you for it, I want to make sure you're protected. Write the language yourself. Whatever you need." So I did. Section 9C compliance, indemnification rider. The language said, "In the event of involuntary termination occurring within 60 days of a documented compliance escalation, the company shall assume full legal liability for all costs incurred by the employee in defense and counteraction of said termination, including damages, with no financial cap and no time limit." Gerald signed it. Outside counsel reviewed it and approved it. It got incorporated into the contracts of 5 senior compliance and procurement staff, including mine. Then Gerald retired to Florida. The paperwork got filed. Time passed. And as far as anyone at Hartwell was concerned, Section 9C didn't exist, except it did. And I knew exactly where it was. The conveyor contract was a vendor agreement for specialized manufacturing components, $18 million. Scott had pushed it through in 4 days. I got my copy on a Thursday afternoon. Read it once fast, then once slow with a highlighter. By the second read, I had a serious problem on my hands. The environmental disposal clause covering manufacturing byproducts didn't meet EPA reporting standards, specifically the threshold requirements under RCRA for hazardous material handling. The contractor liability section had a structural gap that violated OSHA regulations for third-party workers operating on Hartwell's physical sites. If this contract went live and something went wrong, a spill, an injury, a routine audit that went sideways, Hartwell was fully exposed with zero contractual recourse against the vendor. Potential liability: $6.5 million minimum if regulators got involved, and they would have gotten involved. That's not pessimism. That's just knowing how these things go. I wrote the memo. 2 pages, specific clauses identified, regulatory citations included, no editorial commentary. Just the facts, laid out the same way I'd done it 100 times before. Sent it to Howard Schiffer, our general counsel, copied the compliance officer, flagged it time sensitive. Then I went home, had dinner with Sheila, and waited. 2 days of silence. On the second morning, Howard's assistant called. Conference room B, 2 p.m. I knew when she said the room number. Conference room B had glass walls facing the main floor. They used it when they wanted people to see something happen. I walked in at exactly 200. Scott was already there, standing near the head of the table with his arms crossed, wearing the expression of a man who'd already decided how this meeting was going to end. Howard sat to one side with a manila folder in front of him, not making eye contact with anyone. 2 department heads from the operations team were positioned near the window like they'd been placed there as witnesses. Nobody offered me a seat. I pulled out a chair and sat down anyway. Scott didn't bother with preamble. "We're terminating your employment, Carl. Effective immediately." "On what grounds?" I asked. "Breach of protocol. You escalated confidential vendor information outside approved channels. You're not legal counsel. You're not a compliance officer. You used internal systems to undermine an executive decision and disrupt an active deal." I kept my voice flat and even. "I sent a memo through official channels about a contract with documented EPA and OSHA violations. That's not outside my scope. That is literally the job." Scott leaned forward slightly. "Your job is procurement analysis, not strategy, not legal review. We need people who find solutions, not people who throw wrenches into deals because they're not comfortable with pace." He paused for a beat. "Frankly, Carl, 19 years in one place does something to a person's thinking, makes them resistant. That's what this is." There it was, said out loud, right to my face. Legacy bottleneck. Too old to keep up. I'd been hearing variations of it for 8 months. Hearing it from Scott directly didn't feel the way I expected. It just made everything cleaner. He reached into the folder and slid a copy of my NDA across the table, like he was laying down a winning card. "This agreement includes non-disparagement and confidentiality provisions. Any discussion of internal matters outside the company constitutes a personal financial liability. I'd encourage you to read it carefully before you say anything else today." He said it like he was doing me a favor. I looked at the NDA sitting on the table in front of me. Then I reached into the folder I'd brought and pulled out my own copy of my employment contract, already open to page 11, already highlighted in yellow. I placed it on the table and slid it toward Howard. My finger rested on Section 9C. "Before we go any further," I said, I'd like Howard to read that paragraph. Howard picked it up. The room went quiet enough that I could hear the ventilation system running overhead. I watched his eyes move down the page, watched them stop, watched him read the same paragraph a second time. Slower, the change in his face wasn't dramatic. It was more like a stillness that started somewhere around his eyes and moved into his hands, which stopped moving against the folder entirely. "What is that?" Scott asked, looking at Howard. Howard didn't answer right away. "Section 9C, I said. Compliance Indemnification Rider, written in 2009, reviewed and approved by outside counsel, fully executed and on file. In the event of involuntary termination occurring within 60 days of a documented compliance escalation, Hartwell assumes full legal liability for all costs I incur, no financial cap, no time limit." I kept my eyes on Scott. "You fired me 48 hours after I submitted a documented compliance memo. You've just triggered it." Scott looked at Howard. Howard still hadn't looked up from the page. "Is this real?" Scott asked him. His voice had shifted slightly. Not panic, something just below it. Howard set the contract down carefully. "I need to review this fully before we proceed any further. It's in Hartwell's own records," I said. "Fully executed. My attorney will have a copy within the hour." I closed my folder, stood up, straightened my jacket. "I'll see myself out," I said. Nobody moved. Nobody called security. I walked out of that glass-walled conference room, across the main floor where a few people glanced up from their desks, to the elevator bank. Pressed the button. The door opened. I got in. The doors closed and I rode down alone. Back at my desk, I unplugged my laptop and tucked it under my arm. My device company-issued but personally assigned with legal access rights written into my original contract. I pulled the 90-day archive to local storage, every forwarded email, every timestamp, every documented bypass, all of it obtained through approved channels. All of it clean. I handed my badge to the guy at the front desk. He looked confused. I didn't explain, just nodded and walked to the parking lot. Drove home. Pulled into the garage, sat in the truck for a couple of minutes with the engine off, staring at the workbench. Then I got out, put on my old work shirt, and opened up the hood of the F-150. The fuel filter had needed replacing for 3 weeks. I stood there with my hands in the engine bay and let my head run through the sequence quietly. What I had, what I needed, what came next. I was still working through it when Sheila came into the garage. She didn't ask questions. She set a mug of coffee on the corner of the workbench and went back inside without a word. That was enough. Later that night, I called Owen. Didn't mention any of it. He was in the middle of midterms and didn't need the distraction. He spent 20 minutes telling me about a statistics professor who graded on an incomprehensible curve. I listened to all of it, asked follow-up questions. He sounded good. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started building the file. I called Lorraine Voss the next morning at 8 a.m. sharp. I'd worked with Lorraine on a vendor dispute 3 years earlier when a contract disagreement had threatened to become a wrongful termination claim for one of our junior staff. She'd resolved it in 6 weeks in a way that made the opposing side feel like they'd gotten off easy. She was an employment litigator who had zero patience for executives who thought NDAs were magic wands and zero interest in losing. "Carl Briggs," she said when she picked up, "it's been a while. I need a meeting today if you have it. My 10 is open. Give me enough to know what to prepare." I gave her the short version: compliance escalation, termination within 48 hours, Section 9C, 90-day archive. 3 seconds of silence. "Bring everything," she said. "Every page." Her office was downtown 12th floor. We sat across from each other at her conference table, and I laid out the full sequence: the vendor contract, the memo, the termination, the archive. I walked her through Section 9C, line by line. Then I showed her the cease and desist email HR had sent that morning, which had arrived while I was driving over, demanding I refrain from discussing internal matters with any outside parties. Lorraine read the cease and desist and set it down the way you set something down when you've already decided exactly what to do with it. "They tried to silence you the morning after they fired you for a documented compliance escalation," she said. "They did. That email is now evidence of retaliation. They just built another floor onto your case." She tapped her pen once against the table. "Carl, Section 9C means the outcome here is already decided. What we're doing now is making them understand what the number looks like." She looked at me directly. "How aggressive do you want to be?" I want it done right. I said, not fast, right? She nodded once. Good. That's what I needed to hear. While Lorraine started drafting the pre-litigation letter, I made 2 other moves that I hadn't told her about yet. Not because I was hiding them, she'd know soon enough, but because I wanted them ready before the letter landed. The first was vendor outreach. I'd spent enough years in procurement to have real working relationships with the suppliers on that conveyor contract. 2 of them had come to me quietly over the previous months with concerns about the terms Scott had pushed on them: one-sided liability exposure, compressed signing timelines, clauses that left the vendors holding risk that should have stayed with Hartwell. I called both of them, explained my situation plainly, explained the contract was likely going to be voided as part of an internal review. Neither of them needed to be convinced of anything. Both agreed to provide written accounts documenting how the negotiation had gone and what kind of pressure had been applied to get signatures quickly. Not legal testimony. Just third-party records from people who had been in the room and had no reason to lie about what they'd seen. The second call was to Neil Farrow. I'd met Neil at an industry compliance conference back in 2018, regulatory auditor, specialized in environmental reporting violations, the kind of professional who took EPA requirements seriously and didn't make exceptions for companies that claimed they'd been too busy to read the standards properly. We'd kept loose contact over the years, the kind where 6 months pass without a word and then you pick up right where you left off. Neil, I said when he answered hypothetical question, what would it take to open a preliminary EPA review on a manufacturing company's vendor disposal clauses? A short pause. He knew exactly what I was asking without me spelling it out. Hypothetically, he said, a structured inquiry from an informed party with supporting documentation would be enough to start a preliminary review. EPA doesn't require a formal complaint to begin looking. They just need a credible starting point. Understood, I said. Thanks, Neil. I mailed him a packet that same afternoon, the contract language, the specific EPA threshold requirements the clause failed to meet. The relevant regulatory citations laid out clearly, no accusation, no cover letter with my name attached, just the documentation organized cleanly, letting the facts carry the argument on their own. Lorraine's pre-litigation letter arrived at Hartwell's outside counsel on a Wednesday morning. It was, from what she described to me afterward, a precisely constructed document. Section 9C quoted verbatim in the opening paragraph, the timeline of escalation and termination laid out with exact dates and timestamps, the cease and desist email characterized as what it legally was, and a clear accounting of what unlimited indemnification meant in practical dollar terms. She called me Thursday afternoon. Their outside counsel responded in under 18 hours, she said. That's fast. Means someone senior read that letter and went straight to the board. What did they say? They requested a 30-day pause before formal escalation, standard language. What it actually means is they've verified Section 9C is real, they've read the documentation, and they need time to assess the full exposure before they respond. A pause. Then I sent them the vendor corroboration letters. How did that land? When outside counsel sees independent third-party documentation, the conversation changes. This isn't just an employee grievance anymore. This is a governance problem. And governance problems make boards very uncomfortable very quickly. The governance problem was about to get considerably worse for them because of Philip Strand. Strand was Scott's brother-in-law and had been on Hartwell's board for 4 years. During Scott's tenure, he'd been copied on enough internal communications about the fast-track approval process that his claimed ignorance of the compliance gaps was charitably difficult to sustain. Lorraine had identified 3 separate email threads where Strand had been looped into discussions about bypassing standard legal review. She included them in a supplemental package to outside counsel with a single line attached. Board member correspondence regarding the approval process that preceded the compliance violations. That was all it took. Outside counsel came back within 24 hours recommending Strand recuse himself from any board discussion related to the matter. 4 days later, Strand resigned from the board entirely. One-line announcement, no explanation, no public statement, just gone. Without Philip Strand, Scott Velder had no one left to catch him. The board convened an emergency session the following week. From what I heard through contacts still inside, it was not a comfortable meeting. Outside counsel opened with Lorraine's letter and Section 9C displayed on the screen at the front of the room. Board members who had never read past the standard boilerplate of a senior employee's contract were now learning in real time what unlimited indemnification actually meant in dollar terms. No cap, no expiration. Every legal fee I incurred in pursuing this case would be billed directly back to Hartwell. The CFO asked about settlement range. Outside counsel told him that wasn't the right framing. The right question was, what does Scott Velder's continued presence cost compared to what his departure costs? Because right now, every day he remained VP of Operations was another day of accruing liability. They also had the EPA inquiry sitting on the table. Neil had moved quickly. A formal preliminary review letter from EPA's Enforcement Division had arrived at Hartwell 11 days after I'd mailed the packet. Not a full investigation yet, but a preliminary review letter is the kind of document that gets a company's full attention immediately. Regulators don't send those as courtesy notices. The board ordered a full forensic audit of every contract Scott had pushed through without legal review. All 9 of them. The results took 3 weeks to compile and were, by every account I heard afterward, genuinely bad. $18 million in vendor agreements carrying compliance gaps. EPA exposure on 2 contracts. OSHA liability on a 3rd. 1 supplier agreement that had inadvertently transferred certain licensing rights to the vendor through careless boilerplate language that nobody had caught because nobody had been allowed to look. The stock dropped 5.3% over 3 trading days as word moved through the industry. A major enterprise client put a $12 million annual renewal on hold, pending clarity on Hartwell's internal governance. Another partner sent a formal letter requesting an audit of all active contracts before they'd proceed with renewal discussions. Scott, from what I heard, spent this period doing what cornered people do. He sent emails that nobody answered, showed up to meetings he hadn't been invited to, made calls that went to voicemail. His badge stopped working on the executive floor sometime during the 2nd week. His assistant stopped forwarding his messages. He was moving through a building that had already made its decision. It just hadn't told him yet. He found out when security met him at the lobby entrance one morning with a box of his personal belongings and a termination letter. Terminated for cause. No severance. No vesting of the stock options he'd negotiated so carefully into his offer package. No references provided. I heard he stood in the lobby holding the letter for a full minute. I wasn't there to see it. I didn't need to be. Howard Schiffer, our general counsel, departed quietly about 6 weeks after that. His name had appeared on enough internal sign-offs during Scott's tenure that his position had become untenable. He didn't fight it. He just left. 3 months after my termination, Lorraine and I sat across from Hartwell's outside counsel in a neutral conference room and finalized the settlement. The amount is confidential. What I can tell you is that it covered every legal fee Lorraine had billed, compensated the full period of lost income, and included 2 things I'd specifically asked for: a formal written statement clearing my professional record and retracting the breach of protocol language from my termination, and a letter of recommendation signed by the sitting board. I didn't shake anyone's hand warmly on the way out. I signed the documents, picked up my copy, and thanked Lorraine in the parking garage. "You were patient," she said. 19 years of practice, I said. She laughed. One of the few times I'd ever seen her do that. I'm back to work now, consulting independently. Contracts review for mid-size manufacturing companies that want someone who actually knows the regulations and has the history to back it up. The phone started ringing about 2 weeks after the settlement closed. Word travels in manufacturing the same way it travels everywhere, through people who need to know things. Sheila thinks I should slow down. Maybe teach somewhere. I told her I'd think about it. Owen graduated this spring and started at an engineering firm in Cincinnati. I gave him the version of this story you tell your kid when he's 22 and just starting out. Document everything. Put concerns in writing. Be the person who actually reads what he's signing. He'll understand the rest when he gets there. The F-150 runs perfectly, by the way. New fuel filter, new alternator. Starts every morning without complaint. Some things are worth maintaining properly. Not everything needs to be replaced just because someone new decided it looked old. If you've been around long enough to have 19 years anywhere, in a plant, in an office, behind a desk, nobody noticed, you already know what I'm talking about. The work you put in quietly, the documentation you kept when nobody was watching, the process you followed when it was easier not to, that stuff doesn't expire. It compounds. Scott Velder thought experience was a liability, thought the guys who'd been around too long were the ones slowing everything down. A lot of people in his position think the same thing. They're usually the ones who never bothered to read what they were signing. If you're the person in your company who actually reads the contracts, who keeps the records, who follows the process even when everyone else has moved on. Don't stop. You're not the bottleneck. You're the foundation. And one day, someone is going to find that out the hard way. Nobody reads the paperwork until they have to. That's always been their mistake, not mine. And if this story hit close to home, if you've been the guy who got pushed aside by someone half your age with twice the confidence and none of the experience, hit that subscribe button. These stories keep coming because people like you keep showing up to hear them. You've earned that.